Hello, my name is Russell Mullenberg, and this is Eat This Word. It's a weekly program where I serve up bite-sized bits of Bible. Today's bite-sized bit of Bible, today's Bible passage, it comes from 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. Really, my emphasis is going to be on verse 15, but I want to start with verse 14. Here's what it says. It says, "But even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not fear their threats, do not be frightened, but in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." And so for me, this verse, the emphasis in this verse comes from this fourth line here where it says, always be prepared to give an answer. This verse is one of those verses that encourages us as Christians to be able to give witness to what we believe, to be able to explain the reasons for our loyalty to Jesus Christ, for our testimony as Christians. And the word here, and the direction this verse in particular takes us is the word for an answer. Because it's a particular word in the original language. The word is apologia. Greek word that means answer, but also means defense. It's this idea where for Peter, he's talking to people who are facing possible persecution for their faith in Jesus. There's possibility that authorities are going to question them about their loyalty to Jesus, and so it's almost a courtroom kind of situation. And so apologia can have that sort of nuance to it, where you are explaining, you are defending, you are giving reasons. And so this word apologia becomes a branch of Christian study known as apologetics. And so if you go to a Bible school or you go to seminary, there will be classes offered in apologetics. If you browse through a Christian book list on the internet, or if you visit a Christian bookstore, there might be a section labeled apologetics where it gives reasons for what we believe as Christians. It helps to defend the faith against those who would question it. And so it might talk about reasons why we believe in the resurrection, and reasons why we believe the gospel writers are reliable witnesses. And so Lee Strobel's book, The Case for Christ, and that whole series, The Case for Christianity, that would be considered apologetics. Or C.S. Lewis would have been an apologist in his day, someone who helped to explain the reasonableness of Christianity to those who might not believe or might be skeptical. And so for me, and the way I'm wired, this passage from 1 Peter has always been kind of a model verse, a verse that appeals to me because as someone who has studied the faith and someone who is interested in reading and learning about Christianity, that the answers, the explanations, the reasons we believe what we believe. And so as I look at this passage, there are three questions that really kind of jump out to me that I'd like to answer. And so we're going to look at this passage for 3 consecutive weeks. And these are the questions I want to address. Do people ask us to give the reason for the hope we have? Peter sort of assumes that's going to happen, that people are going to wonder why you're a Christian. And so does that happen in our lives? And then second, the context of the verse is, well, what if we're being questioned for doing the right thing? What if some of this persecution or some of the skepticism is coming at us when we're doing what Jesus wants us to do, when we're doing good things? And what about that? And then third, and really the thrust of the passage is, how do we defend the faith well? When Peter talks about doing so with gentleness and respect and with a clean conscience. And so that will be the third week. But for today, the question is, do people ask us to give the reason for the hope that we have? Do people see evidence of hope in us? If you look at the verse, that Peter, again, assumes this is going to happen. He says you need to be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. He says people are going to see in you, Christian, some evidence of hope. Hope itself, that's an invisible thing. You can't really see hope in a person. And yet, Peter says there should be something about the way you live your life that gives evidence that you've put your hope in Jesus. There should be something about us that gives evidence that is going to arouse the curiosity of people about why we're different, perhaps, than other people. And so what is the evidence of the hope? What is it that people should be seeing in us? And for an answer, I want to go back up into verse 14, into verse 15. And what Peter is doing here is he's quoting from the Old Testament. There's a quote here from Isaiah: "Do not fear their threats, do not be frightened." You see that in quotation marks. So that is more or less a direct quote from this Isaiah passage. And then the first line in verse 15 is he's paraphrasing this Old Testament passage. So what we need to do if we want to understand this evidence for hope is we need to go back and check out that Old Testament passage. So it's Isaiah chapter 8, verses 12 through 14, and here's what it says. It says, "Do not call conspiracy everything this people calls a conspiracy. Do not fear what they fear. Do not dread it. The Lord Almighty is the one you are to regard as holy. He's the one you're to fear. He's the one you are to dread. He will be a holy place." So here, the context for this passage, Isaiah is talking to King Ahaz. He's warning him against foreign entanglements, foreign alliances. He's saying, don't put your hope in Egypt. Don't put your hope in Assyria. Put your hope in the Lord. Don't fear what they can do to you. Rather, put your hope and trust in the Lord. He's the one people should fear and trust in him. And so the part, of course, that Peter is quoting is that line: do not fear what they fear. Don't fear their threats. Do not dread it. And then the part that Peter paraphrases is the Lord Almighty is the one you are to regard as holy. And the interesting thing there, the Lord Almighty, that is in the original Hebrew, Lord of hosts, Lord of armies, Lord Yahweh Sabaoth, the God of angel armies. He's the one that has the power. He's the one who is set apart. And so we should revere him. We should regard him as holy. And so when Peter is encouraging us to have hope, he in a context where perhaps we might feel under threat from people who are skeptical about what we believe, he takes us to this passage. It says, do not fear what they fear, don't dread it. The Lord Almighty is the one you should regard as holy. So we go back to the 1 Peter passage, and you see that line that he paraphrases, in your hearts revere Christ the Lord. You see how it changes slightly. It was the Lord Sabaoth, the Lord of angel armies. Now it's Christ as Lord. But it's the same idea. He's the one you're supposed to set apart. He's the one you're supposed to treasure and reference and see as holy. Put your fear in him. And so evidence of hope is going to be found in our confidence in Jesus Christ. So just looking at the passage really quickly, 3 things about what it means to have hope. One is fearlessness. Do not fear their threats. Do not be frightened by what others can do to us. Again, imagine a persecution situation where maybe someone is being brought before Caesar, the Colosseum, this whole idea of renouncing Christ, or perhaps losing your life, losing your treasure. And Peter encouraged, do not fear what they can do to you. Don't fear who they are. That's fearlessness. That's going to give evidence. That's going to make people wonder, where does this hope come from? Also, hope treasures Christ above all else. So that word revere, to consider Christ as holy, to consider Christ as more valuable than treasure, even life itself. That's what this hope is going to cause people to question. And then third, we'll go back to the Isaiah passage, finding our refuge, finding our sanctuary in Jesus Christ, for he will be our holy place. So what is this hope that people might question us about? What is the evidence in our lives that should give people pause and create curiosity in them about why we are different? And it's this hope that's found in trusting in Jesus. Fearlessness, treasuring Christ above all else, finding our sanctuary in him. And so the question is, do people ask us about our hope? Do our lives give evidence that we possess this hope, that we have treated Jesus as the one who is above all else?